Chapter 4. In this chapter you are learning about how to spot the warning signs before you buy. Imagine this. You've arrived to view what looks like the perfect property. It's a beautiful 18th century cottage with exposed oak beams, a thatched roof, a large garden and stunning countryside views. You've already started imagining Christmas dinners in the dining room and summer evenings in the garden. But before you fall in love with any property, especially an older one, it's worth slowing down and looking a little closer. Most buyers spend time checking the boiler, inspecting windows and asking about damp. Very few think to look for signs of bats. The truth is, you probably won't actually see a bat during a daytime viewing. Bats spend most daylight hours hidden inside roof spaces, under tiles, behind timber cladding, or inside tiny cracks in walls. However, there are clues that may suggest a property has been used as a bat roost. One of the most common signs is small, dark droppings found in the loft or beneath roof timbers. To the untrained eye, they can look similar to mouse droppings, so don't jump to conclusions. Only a qualified person can identify the cause with confidence. Another clue is dark staining around small gaps, where bats regularly enter and leave the building. Over time, repeated use of these tiny openings can leave visible marks. If you view a property around sunset, you might even notice bats flying from the roof. Remember though, seeing bats flying nearby doesn't necessarily mean they are roosting in that particular building. The age of the property can also be a factor. Older cottages, converted barns, Victorian homes, farmhouses, listed buildings, and houses with traditional slate or clay tile roofs may provide the types of spaces bats sometimes use. Again, this doesn't mean these buildings have bats. It simply means they may deserve a little more attention, particularly if you're planning major renovations. One mistake buyers often make is assuming that because the loft looks clean, there's nothing to worry about. That's not always true. Some bat roosts are used only during certain times of the year. Others are so small they're easily overlooked. This is why a professional survey can be invaluable when there's reason to believe bats may be present, and your plans involve work that could affect a potential roost. Now let's talk about estate agents. Many are honest professionals who provide accurate information based on what they know. But remember, they can only tell you what they've been informed about. If previous owners never mentioned bats, or if there has never been a survey, the agent may genuinely have no knowledge of any issue. That's why it's important to ask clear questions. For example, has the property ever had a bat survey? Have the owners ever been advised that bats use the building? Has any previous roof work required ecological advice? These questions won't guarantee every issue is uncovered, but they may reveal useful information before you commit to the purchase. Your surveyor also plays an important role. If they notice features that could indicate bat activity, they may recommend further specialist advice rather than making assumptions. That recommendation shouldn't automatically alarm you. Think of it the same way you would a damp survey or a structural engineer's report. It's simply another part of understanding the property you're buying. The most expensive mistakes often happen when buyers rush. They become emotionally attached. They skip important questions. They exchange contracts too quickly. And only afterwards discover complications they could have investigated beforehand. Buying a property is never just about today's condition. It's also about your future plans. If you intend to leave the house exactly as it is, the presence of bats may have very little impact on your daily life. But if your dream includes a loft conversion, an extension, replacing the roof or converting an outbuilding, identifying potential issues before you buy can save a great deal of time, stress and money. In our next chapter, we'll look at real-life examples of UK homeowners who discovered bat-related issues after buying, and the lessons every buyer can learn from their experiences. Chapter 5. Real-life lessons. What can happen after you buy? Let me tell you about 3 situations that show why doing your homework before buying a property can make all the difference. These are based on common scenarios experienced by UK homeowners and property professionals. Story 1. The Dream Cottage. Mark and Emma had spent almost a year searching for the perfect family home. Then they found it, the beautiful stone cottage in the countryside. It had original oak beams, a large garden, and incredible views across open fields. They fell in love immediately. The property needed some updating, but they had budgeted around £40,000 for improvements. The first job was replacing the aging roof. Their builder climbed into the loft for a final inspection. Within minutes he came back down. "I think you need to get this checked before we touch anything." Small droppings were visible beneath the roof timbers. the roofing work was paused while specialist advice was sought. Instead of beginning work the following week, the project was delayed while the correct ecological process was followed. Although the roof was eventually replaced, the couple admitted later that they wished they'd known about the possibility before exchanging contracts. Their biggest mistake wasn't buying the house, it was not asking enough questions beforehand. Before I explain further, please like, share and subscribe my channel, and also click on the bell button so that you will get a notification of my next video. Story 2. The barn conversion. James purchased an old barn with ambitious plans. He wanted to create a luxury holiday rental. Architects designed stunning plans. Planning discussions were positive. Everything seemed straightforward. During the ecological assessment required for the project, evidence of a bat roost was identified. His design had to be revised to reduce the impact on the roost. The project still went ahead, but it took longer than expected and required additional professional input. James later said something that every buyer should remember. "I wish I'd included more time and contingency in my budget from the beginning." That's valuable advice for anyone planning major renovations. Story 3. The happy ending. Now let's look at a different outcome. Helen bought a listed farmhouse. Before exchanging contracts, she asked plenty of questions. She instructed a thorough survey. She discussed her renovation ideas with her solicitor and surveyor. When signs suggested bats might be present, she sought specialist advice before completing the purchase. Because she understood the situation in advance, she adjusted her renovation timetable and budget accordingly. There were no unpleasant surprises. The work was completed legally and successfully. Today she still says buying that farmhouse was one of the best decisions she ever made. The difference? Preparation, not luck. The lesson: notice something about all three stories. None of them suggest that a property with bats should automatically be avoided. Instead, they show that informed buyers are usually in a much stronger position than buyers who assume everything will be straightforward. The biggest financial shocks rarely come from problems you know about. They come from the ones you never thought to ask about. When emotions take over during a property purchase, it's easy to ignore potential complications. You imagine family celebrations, garden parties, future renovations, children growing up in the home. All perfectly natural. But successful property buyers learn to balance excitement with careful investigation. Ask questions. Read your survey carefully. Talk openly with your solicitor. Explain your future renovation plans. And if there's any suggestion that protected wildlife could be affected, seek the appropriate professional advice before making commitments. A few hours of investigation before exchange can save months of stress later. In the next chapter, we'll reveal the types of properties that are statistically more likely to attract bat roosts, and explain why some homes carry a higher level of risk than others, especially if you're planning major building work. Okay, let's have a look in Chapter 6. Which properties are most likely to have bats? If you're searching for your dream home, one question you might be asking is, what types of properties are most likely to have bats? The answer might surprise you. It's not necessarily about where the property is located. It's more about the age of the building, how it's constructed, and the small spaces it offers for roosting. Let's start with older homes. Properties built 100, 200, or even 300 years ago often have features that bats find attractive. Small gaps beneath roof tiles, cracks in old stone walls, timber beams, traditional slate roofs, and quiet loft spaces that haven't changed for decades. To a bat, these tiny spaces can provide shelter and protection. That's why period cottages are often associated with bat roosts. Now, before anyone panics, remember this. Most old houses do not have bats, but they are generally more likely to provide suitable habitat than a modern house, built with tightly sealed construction methods. Another type of property worth mentioning is the converted barn. Many buyers dream of owning one. High ceilings, open-plan living, original wooden beams, beautiful countryside views. But before those barns became homes, they often stood undisturbed for decades. During that time, wildlife, including bats, may have used them as roosting sites. This doesn't mean every barn conversion has bats. However, if you're buying one with plans for further alterations, it's sensible to investigate carefully. Farmhouses are another example. Many have large loft spaces, traditional roof structures, and surrounding woodland or fields that provide excellent feeding habitat for bats. Again, that's not a warning to avoid farmhouses. It's simply a reminder to ask the right questions. Listed buildings can present similar considerations. Because they're historic, repairs and alterations are already subject to additional rules. If bats are also present, you'll need to ensure both heritage and wildlife requirements are taken into account when planning work. Now let's talk about location. Many people assume bats only live in remote villages. That's not true. Bats can be found in towns and cities too. They may roost in churches, Victorian terraces, schools, old warehouses, bridges, and even some newer buildings if suitable access points exist. So don't assume that buying in a city automatically removes the possibility. One common myth is that bats only choose neglected buildings. Again, that's incorrect. A beautifully maintained home can still contain a bat roost if the conditions are suitable. Likewise, a rundown building may have no bats at all. Appearance alone tells you very little. So what should buyers actually do? If you're buying a modern detached house built within the last 20 years, with no plans for major alterations, the likelihood of encountering bat-related issues may be lower than with an 18th century cottage. But if you're buying an older property, and your dream includes replacing the roof, converting the loft, adding an extension, or renovating outbuildings, that's the time to ask more detailed questions. Don't rely on guesswork, don't assume, and don't let excitement replace due diligence. The cost of asking a few sensible questions before exchange is tiny, compared with discovering unexpected complications after completion. Remember, buying property isn't just about today's appearance. It's about understanding tomorrow's possibilities and tomorrow's responsibilities. In the next chapter, we'll discuss one of the most important parts of the buying process, what your surveyor can and can't tell you about bats, and why many buyers misunderstand the purpose of a standard home survey. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. I see you in the next video.